Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're using a really fascinating source text called The Mission and the Money to finally connect the dots behind all those wild headlines you've been seeing about OpenAI over the last decade. Seriously, if you've ever been confused by how a single company can be in the news for saving humanity, threatening humanity, firing its CEO, and raising billions of dollars literally all at once, well, you are definitely in the right place. Let's dive in. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the unlikely nonprofit, the bet on scale, into public hands, the boardroom crisis, the structural shift, and we'll wrap up with the unanswered question. So, we kind of have to start with the massive paradox driving this whole story. How on earth did an organization founded entirely to protect humanity from dangerous AI transform into the most aggressive commercial force in tech history? I mean, on paper, it sounds like a complete contradiction, right? Well, the source text reveals something super interesting. This transformation, it wasn't just random chaos. It actually followed a very distinct four-part playbook. Declare the mission, bet on scale, put it in everyone's hands, and finally, bend the structure. As we go through this explainer, you're going to see these four moves play out over and over again. Chapter 1. The Unlikely Nonprofit, a Mission Born Out of Dread. Picture this. It's a dinner in 2015, and founders like Elon Musk and Sam Altman launch OpenAI out of sheer dread. They were absolutely terrified of corporate-controlled superintelligence. So they wanted a research lab totally unconstrained by the need to make a profit. Fast forward a decade to 2025, and that open-source nonprofit safety lab is now a massively valued corporate engine pushing closed models. It was night and day. So how did they get from point A to point B? The main culprit here? Compute. The staggering cost of raw computational capacity, we're talking the specialized chips and the massive data centers needed to train these AI systems, became an absolute gravity well. The team quickly realized that achieving their mission wasn't just about coming up with clever algorithms. They needed incredibly expensive hardware just to survive in the game. Which brings us to Chapter 2, the bet on scale. Betting that bigger means smarter. So they went all in on this thing called the transformer architecture. Think of it kind of like your phone's autocomplete, but on an unimaginably massive scale. By using it to simply predict the next word in a sentence, they proved that just throwing more data and more compute at the problem unlocked these shocking, completely unexpected abilities. It wasn't just guessing words anymore. It was reasoning, summarizing, translating. True intelligence was basically emerging from sheer scale. But here's the catch. Scale costs money, $1 billion to be exact. Back in 2019, getting crushed by the astronomical costs of all that compute, they had to execute that bend the structure move for the very first time. They spun up a capped profit arm specifically so they could accept a massive check from Microsoft to pay for server space. The pure nonprofit was now, officially, tangled up with corporate money. Chapter 3. Into public hands, the ChatGPT phenomenon. By late 2022, they made a brilliant move. They took this complex model and wrapped it in a simple, easy-to-use interface, ChatGPT. They released it as a free public preview, turning everyday users into their ultimate distribution channel. And their secret sauce was a technique called RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback, which gave the AI its helpful, conversational tone. Almost overnight, the public wasn't just an audience anymore. We became the very data engine catapulting them past their rivals. As you can imagine, the explosive adoption of ChatGPT triggered an absolute arms race in the tech industry. Google panicked, startups flooded the market, and OpenAI suddenly needed more compute than ever before. This led Microsoft to inject roughly $10 billion more in early 2023. This jaw-dropping figure pretty much cemented OpenAI's deep structural dependence on commercial capital to keep their lead. Chapter 4. The Boardroom Crisis. The tension boils over. All that underlying tension between the safety-first crowd and the speed and scale crowd finally exploded during a crazy 5-day stretch in November 2023. On Friday, the nonprofit board abruptly fired CEO Sam Altman, desperately trying to assert their original safety mission. But by Monday, over 700 employees threatened to walk out and follow Altman to Microsoft. By Wednesday, Altman was back, and the board was entirely replaced. Employee loyalty and sheer investor leverage completely crushed the nonprofit's formal authority. Chapter 5. The structural shift, rebuilding into a commercial juggernaut. Look, impartially speaking, both sides of that boardroom drama were acting in what they genuinely believed was good faith based on their views of responsibility. But the aftermath? It decisively shifted power toward commercial momentum.
We saw a very visible exodus of safety-focused leaders. Heavy hitters like Ilya Sutskever and Jan Mauro, they felt that the vital, long-term work of AI safety was just losing the internal battle for resources against the overwhelming pressure to ship new products.
Meanwhile, the tech just kept leveling up as these models evolved beyond text to process highly realistic video and to actually reason through hard math and coding problems. Compute costs skyrocketed even further. This relentless technical success drove the company toward an absolutely astonishing valuation. We're talking roughly $850 billion. And this bottomless need for cash to fund their compute, it forced the final version of their fourth move. In 2025, they bent the structure entirely, reorganizing into a public benefit corporation. This was a real game changer because it allowed them to court Wall Street for unlimited public market capital, stripping away the old profit caps while still hanging on to the comforting, idealistic language of their original public mission.
Chapter 6: The Unanswered Question, the Ambiguous Finish Line.
So, what does this all mean? Well, everything OpenAI does, every structural bend, every massive funding round, is justified by the impending arrival of AGI, or artificial general intelligence. Yet, experts are completely divided on whether these systems are genuinely thinking and reasoning, or if they're just highly sophisticated, illusionary mimics of human language. There's this brilliant quote from the source text that just hits the nail on the head for this entire decade. When the mission and the money point in the same direction, OpenAI is unstoppable. The whole drama of its existence has been about what happens in the moments when they do not. When idealism clashed with the brutal economics of scale, well, the money always won out.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Looking at this wild evolution from a safety charity to a commercial titan, we really have to ask ourselves, is this constant structural compromise the only practical way to safely fund and shape the future of technology? Or are we just funding an unstoppable trillion-dollar race toward a complete illusion? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and always keep questioning what you see on the horizon.